Duisende Suid-Afrikaners het verlede week in stede opgeruk om teen immigrante te betoog. 'n Organisasie genaamd March and March is aan die voorpunt van hierdie nuwe anti-immigrante sentiment. Daar is reeds verskeie gevalle waar immigrante aangeval word. Is dit 'n tikkende tydbom? Om die situasie te bespreek, verwelkom ek vir Michael Beaumont van ActionSA, Ashley Sauls van die Rhetoric en die joernalis Ferial Haffajee. Ferial, so why are we seeing this latest round of anti-immigrant sentiment and protests?
It's being stoked by politicians. It's also, you can see that political entrepreneurs on the ground who are looking to make a name for themselves and often to get into political parties are definitely forming very easily movements by leveraging they're telegenic, they're beautiful people, they're charismatic, they find followings, they try and take it to the ground, and I argue then that they try and pass it into gaining big political office. We've seen this pattern around the world, and we've also seen it repeatedly in our country. Each time it happens, it endangers our country because so many of our key businesses have operations on the rest of our continent, but also what kind of a country does it make us if we don't know our history? If we don't know the history of the song Stimela, which we all love to sing and to hear, it's actually a story about how we were built by migrant labor in South Africa.
Ferial, we have two politicians sitting here representing political parties that have taken a stance against immigration, illegal immigration in some instances. Would you say that they are complicit then in this?
I wouldn't say that they are complicit. I mean, you have to respect our political representatives. But in each of the cases with the two political parties who join us here tonight, I look at the portfolios which their members hold or have held or continue to hold, and I often think to myself, if they just made a capable state, you know, for example, if Mr. kykNET, who I count as someone I can talk to easily of the Patriotic Alliance, if he made our transport networks cheaper, more accessible, better for the working class to get to opportunities, then we wouldn't need the stoking of anti-immigrant violence. And similarly, when Mr. Herman Mashaba was the mayor of Johannesburg, many times did I cover the stories of how if you just make the local state work better, you can see more workers coming to town, encourage more job opportunities to make. We don't have to have this kind of politics.
Michael, your response to that, your party leader Herman Mashaba was at a March on March event last week where he said he supports the movement unconditionally. But what then about the violence we've seen since?
Well, I think we've got to be quite clear. ActionSA's positioning and Herman Mashaba's positioning has always been to say that people must come to our country, but they must come here legally, and when they're here, they must obey our laws. You can't take issue with that kind of logic because that's what our laws say about immigration. In fact, you know, for real, every successful country around the world operates that way. If you walk into Botswana and just pretend that you have the right to walk in there by virtue of our historic past, you'll be thrown out on your ear because countries with the rule of law don't allow chaos. The bottom line here is that there has been a situation of chaos that has been bred, not for the sake of political gain of anyone who opposes it, but actually because governments have failed to police our borders and to ensure that people and goods come into our country legally and in a way that doesn't endanger the South African people. Ferial talks about business interests. The businesses of South Africa are getting hammered by illicit goods coming across our borders on a daily basis that are not being controlled. And the fact that the South African government has let us down. And one of the real questions we have to ask ourselves is we now have this GNU, a government that now involves various political parties, including the one to my left. And yet we're not seeing any change on this immigration battle. In fact, it looks like their fight for immigration has been silenced by those who are now riding the BMWs.
Ashley, jou reaksie daarop, julle is in die regering, is julle nie 'n groter rol om te speel om die staat meer doeltreffend te laat funksioneer, sodat daar beter dienste gelewer word en baie Suid-Afrikaners nie voel dat 'n beter lewe van hulle afgesteel word deur buitelanders nie?
Yeah, it's very interesting that, number one, we're bringing a big immigration issue, illegal immigration issue, to a MMC of transport from Feral's side here. To say that if kykNET does something different, then there wouldn't be these protests or marches. Indirectly, I think we take it as a compliment that we think that kykNET can fix the problem, which he would do once he becomes mayor of Johannesburg. But that's not really the problem or the cause of the problem. As far as the GNU is concerned, we're very proud to be part of the GNU. And of course, ActionSA has to be dealing with opposition politics, but has done absolutely nothing with the immigration problem. When you talk of the GNU, there's been headway made. Deportations in the past 5 years because of the GNU has gone up 18%. 109,000 deportations in one financial year. So there's some headway, but of course more can be done. And that's now where the Patriotic Alliance comes in and says, we are very clear that you need to put South Africans first, because the illegal immigration issue, not the, if you are legal in the country, no problem. If you are illegal in the country, that's the problem. There's no documentation. It is causing an overburden on our public systems, hospitals. When I was MMC of Health, it is largely publicized when I was at Rahima Musa, and I saw South Africans on the floor. And when you determined who the people on the beds were, it was illegal immigrants. So the Patriotic Alliance maintains that illegal immigration must be dealt with. If Patriotic Alliance had to be in charge in a majority government, there would have been a state of emergency and mass deportation of illegal immigration.
Fair, but I mean, we can all agree that since these marches have started, and we've seen the rhetoric, we've seen violence as well, people being beaten up in the streets, in some instances South Africans being beaten up, because I mean it's impossible in the moment to determine whether someone is here legally or illegally. Should the political parties they not come out stronger against the violence?
I think everybody should come out stronger. You know, the pastor to my right here, I want to quote another pastor who I often look to for inspiration, is Martin Luther King. We have to be extremists for love, you know. If we are going to adopt extreme positions, let's adopt the extremist positions of our constitution, which enjoin us to act in the spirit of Ubuntu. You can't, once somebody is sick in a bed, go and ask them their nationality. You need a rational, well-executed, well-functioning immigration system so that your borders are not as porous as ours are. And often I have to say, in those marches, I don't see the distinction between legal and undocumented migrants, almost never. The language of violence is so dangerous. I mean, if you look at the Rwandan genocide, if you study any genocides in the world, they are preceded by the rhetorics of hate. And that's what concerns me, is that we are making it okay for that kind of rhetoric of hate to march so rampant in our city streets. Eh?
Michael, I mean, the Kenyan embassy, the United Nations, the Nigerian embassy have all taken issue on this and issued statements. It's not a good look for South Africa.
Well, actually, let's take a bit of a look at our neighbours. Really, what you've got in many of the sub-Saharan countries is the creation of political and economic crises right on our doorsteps. And in many ways, people flooding across into our country because of the crisis being created by our SADC neighbours. And instead of South Africa using its position in the region as a powerhouse and putting these countries on terms, we're just taking in all these people, many of whom are leaving these countries to exploit a very weak criminal justice system in South Africa that is incapable of dealing with people who are found to be breaking our laws. So with the greatest respect to our neighbours, their concerns are meaningless to the South African people because their problems are being brought into South Africa in very large numbers. And they're doing nothing about it themselves, even though we're the ones having to pay for it. I actually saw the statistic. Ashley referred to the 100,000 odd people that have been deported, which is a drop in the ocean compared to what actually needs to happen. That costs us 300 million rand a year that we spend not educating South African people, not providing health care like Ferial says we should be doing better than we are, and I agree, we should be. But we're spending it sending people back to where they came from. And that's a real waste of public money. From that point of view, I think our neighbours need to be doing a hell of a lot more, and the era of quiet diplomacy needs to change.
Actually, realistic, what should happen to the undocumented migrants in South Africa, even those who are here legally? Because in some of these protests, we've seen people saying, we don't care whether people are here legally or not, we want foreigners out. Wat moet met hierdie mense gebeur? Miljoene van hulle. As jy sê dat hulle al 100,000 so in 'n jaar gedoen het, dit is 'n druppel aan die emmer, soos Michael sê. Is the idea then to make life impossible for these people? Is the hope then for them to leave by their own volition?
Look, people like Ferial and them is making it extremely difficult. I mean, I think that they're the problem. But I must correct you.
How is Ferial the problem? How are you saying the media is the problem?
No, I'm speaking specifically about her because it's very irresponsible to sit and then refer to the pastor on the right and then make an underlying statement that makes it look like we are not honest about what we're doing. And so that's a big problem because that's really what happens in the media often. You would have a situation where a certain narrative is pushed. So to correct so that we stop incorrect journalism, especially what happened now. I'm a former pastor. But what I've learned from being a pastor is also a scripture that talks about wolves in sheepskin. You have a situation where South Africans needs to be put first. Now you have people here sounding like they are speaking for South Africans, but actually using human rights to then put South Africans second. I'm on the committee for higher education. There are South Africans, professors, who qualifies to hold positions, and it's given to foreign nationals. How can you not get a job that you qualify for in your own country? We are merely saying, put South Africans first. And the frustrations that you see on the ground, which people like Ferial and them wants to paint as xenophobic, which is actually, when we say illegal immigration should be dealt with, that's not being xenophobic, that's being patriotic. Put South Africans first. Be unapologetic about that. So you can do sweeping statements about pastors on the right or the left or whoever. We will maintain, the truth shall set you free. South Africans are not being treated fairly by not being put first. Foreign nationals, even in terms of legislation now, you have the critical skills that is gazetted, and then you have Home Affairs having the point system, where the Act, the Employment Service Act requires you, before you give a foreign national a job, you must first make sure that no South African can do it. But when you have, using the point system of Home Affairs, when you reach 100 points, then you can then waive that requirement. So you can give a foreign national a job without going to look for South Africans. That's protecting the rights of foreign nationals rather than South African citizens.
We're getting into the technicalities. Ashley, Ferial, just your response to Ashley's statement.
I do believe that universities must be replete with people from around the world, because that's how you teach our young people the beauty of the globe. You have to draw on skills from around the world. Like our best minds must be able to go to universities in Nairobi, in the US, in the UK, anywhere in the world our academics must go to. So we must have people from around the world. So there's this healthy maybe around of skills, and we are not navel gazers, we're global people. But just a small counterfactual, right? This woman, a scholar called Tanya Zak, she wrote a book recently which shows that Small Street Mall and its environs in Joburg, it generates 10 billion rand a year in trade into our region. Now that's something we should harness and grow rather than stomp out. Sandton City, for example, is 5 billion. In fact, Sandton, I think, is 5 billion turnover. This small part of Joburg is 10 billion rand a year, and that's because of this exciting trade in the region. For me, we must make those things open and better and more.
Michael, last word to you.
Yeah, I just think there's got to be a little bit of a correction here. I mean, I don't agree with Ferial's positioning on the topic. She and I have argued this on many occasions. We disagree. I don't think that you can describe people who want their country and their countrymen to be put first as xenophobic. I think every successful country around the world works that way. But I think it is a bit trite that Ashley says the problem is Ferial, while his party sits in the GNU government that is responsible for dealing with our borders. And I want to address this point directly because he calls it being oppositional. But the Patriotic Alliance campaigned on this agenda, Abahambe. They went into the GNU, they accepted ministerial positions, they had every ability to put terms to the ANC to say, we will not form part of this government unless you reform A, B, and C about our immigration system. They didn't do that. And right now, as we have this GNU government, it continues just as the ANC government has before. Our borders are just as porous. Our government is just as indecisive to determine who should and shouldn't be in our country. And he talks about legislation. ActionSA is bringing a constitutional amendment that's being heard in Parliament to say that South Africa shouldn't belong to all who live in it, but it should belong to South Africans. His party has brought no such changes to our legislation or our constitution because they've been swallowed in the GNU and the fight for illegal immigration from them with it.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much to our panelists for your time this evening. Net hierna gesels ons oor verslankingsmiddels en later praat ons met Kali Kriel oor sy omstrede besoek aan oud-president Jacob Zuma. Bly ingeskakel.